A Galilee soccer team gains promotion to the top league of Israeli football. And in Qatar, in the Persian Gulf, a member of the Israeli Knesset intimates that he won't be returning back to Israel. Two very different scenes, but they reflect two different aspects of one of the big issues facing Israeli society, the place of the Arab minority in a state with a Jewish majority. To adopt a soccer image, which way is the majority-minority match heading as Israel prepares to enter the 60th year of its existence? Whichever way, more and more, it's an issue which Israel ignores only at its peril. Earlier this month, rumours about Dr. Azmi Bishara, the most famous Arab Knesset member, began circulating. Bishara is afraid to return to Israel. Bishara intends to resign from the Knesset. The Israeli Security Agency has decided to accuse Bishara of treason, of espionage. Court order gagging publication on any information about Bishara's actions made the rumours all the more intriguing. What in fact has Azmi Bishara done? We don't know, or certainly we aren't being told. A decade ago, Azmi Bishara, a Christian Arab, Israeli, a Palestinian with Israeli citizenship, he would define himself, established a political movement known as Balad. Since 1996, he has been an elected Knesset member, and during this time he has had many run-ins with the Israeli authorities, for travelling to Damascus and for giving speeches there in which he praised not only Syria, but also Hezbollah actions against Israel from southern Lebanon, and for visiting Beirut following last year's Lebanon war, having declared that Israel was committing no less than war crimes. For many Israelis, it was yet further evidence of how Bishara was using his parliamentary immunity to harm Israel. Many Jewish Knesset members see him as a fifth columnist and argue that Israeli democracy has a right, indeed they say an obligation, to defend itself against what he stands for. On the other hand, Bishara supporters say he is seen as a threat by state agencies, not because of any particular action or statement on his behalf, but because he's become a symbol of new attitudes among Arab Israelis. In recent months, indeed, political activists and Arab intellectuals have drafted various documents which articulate how they conceive the future of Israel and the place of the Arab minority in that future. The underlying assumption of these documents is that so long as Israel is defined as a Jewish state, it will fall short on basic democratic principles, and more particularly on the right of the minority to achieve full equality. They thus advocate the transformation of Israel into a bilingual and multicultural democracy for all its citizens, rather than a Jewish democracy. The latter, a Jewish democracy, is in their view simply a contradiction in terms. Not long after publication of these proposals, the prominent Tel Aviv daily Ma'ariv reported on a meeting between the head of the Shin Bet security agency, Yuval Diskin, and Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. Diskin reportedly warned the Prime Minister about what he defined as the potential radicalization of Israel's Arab citizens. It constituted, reportedly in Diskin's view, a strategic threat to the state's existence, because there was growing support for the basic conception which Azmi Bishara had formulated, that Israel's future is not as a Jewish state, but in his phrase, as a state for all its citizens. According to Bishara supporters, the pressure on their champion is because he is regarded as a symbolic threat, because he personifies this recent demand of Arab intellectuals to change Israel from a Jewish democracy to what is called a democracy for all its citizens. Whether or not this is what underlies the mystery over whether or not Bishara will or will not return to Israel, or whether he may or may not resign from the Knesset, the question is this: is this indeed the attitude of the majority among Israel's 1 million Arab citizens, or is it only a dream of an increasingly radicalized elite? Step up the Sachnin attitude. Sachnin, a town of 25,000 in central Galilee, whose soccer team catapulted into Israeli national consciousness a couple of years ago when it won the State Cup and thus qualified to represent Israel in European play. The soccer success of Sachnin provided an opportunity for what I call the Sachnin approach to come forward, an alternative to the Bishara philosophy of what place the Arab minority should have in Israel. Basically, the Sachnin philosophy argues that the Arabs of Israel want a part of Israel's experience, a full part. They do not want to change the essential character of the state, but equally they do not want to be relegated to the sidelines. In soccer parlance, they want to be in the center of the national pitch, equal members of the state. If the state has a predominantly Jewish character, to be Israelis does not mean that Arabs have to be Jews. To be part of the state, they can still retain their separate identity and express themselves collectively in this view, yet still be part of Israel, if, that is, the majority is willing to accommodate them. What the Sachin soccer experience has provided for Arab Israelis is that there is an alternative to the philosophy being posed by Bishara or the so-called elites. It has happened in the sense that equality and equality of opportunity has been achieved on the soccer field. The problem is what happens after the 90-minute match is up. Those arguing the Sachin line want Arab Israelis to be accepted not just into the top soccer league, but into the top ranks of what they graphically call Israel's League of Acceptance. To revert to the other side of the picture, what went wrong with Azmi Bishara, asked cogently Riyad Ali, a Druze Arab reporter for public television Channel 1. Riyad Ali notes that even Bishara's political rivals concede that he is a man very much to be reckoned with, an important thinker. But something went wrong, says Ali, with this notion of a state for all its citizens. That's because, he points out, the underlying assumption of this concept is that to make such a philosophy work, Arab Israelis would have to find a willing partner in the Jewish majority. The Bishara vision simply calls for Jews to relinquish the Jewish character of the state, and that simply is not going to happen. As a result, concludes Riyad Ali, the dialogue advocated by Bishara is impossible at all, and Bishara's link is not to Israel, but to the Arab nation. On the other hand, what many young Arabs in Israel have understood is that since Jews are simply not going to relinquish the Jewish character of their state, they have to recognize Israel for what it is. Not first and foremost a state of all its citizens, but a state which provides a home for the Jewish people. Enter a humble Sachin school teacher, Wurud Miari. She puts the equation beautifully. What both peoples, the Jews of Israel and the Arabs of Israel, have to understand, she says, is that both have no other land, that both must recognize and accept the legitimacy of the rightful place of the other in one single state, where, though Jews are a majority, the Arab minority is guaranteed equal rights and equal opportunities. This approach may be even more of a threat than that posed by Bishara, because it really is a serious challenge to the Jewish majority. It's all too easy for Jews to fob off the Bishara challenge as serving the interest of the enemies of Israel. Bishara, after all, is the fuel for the fire of any campaign among nationalist and right-wing Jews who trade on fear of Arabs, on hatred of Arabs, on suspicion and even revulsion for the people who live in their midst. But it's much harder for Jewish Israelis to brush off the challenge proffered by those Arab Israelis who argue that they do accept the majority's rights to determine the character of the state, but that the majority must accommodate them also into that state as equal partners. Here, Jewish Israelis are called upon to grapple with creating the kind of result which is not normally the ideal result on a soccer field, a draw, a tie, but which on the field of life is an ideal result, one in which both sides win.